Welcome, Mantua Township. Mayor Bob Zimmerman here with Mayor Message 26. I have with me today special guest, Chairman of our Land Use Board, Bob Harris. Mr. Harris is a 42-year resident of Mantua Township, and he served on the Land Use Board for 30 years. The purpose of this Mayor's Message is to talk a little bit about the functionality of the Land Use Board. I felt as mayor it was time to give our residents a better understanding of how the process works relative to applications that come in before the board, whether it be a housing development within the township, a new business being built in the township. All these types of applications come before our Land Use Board, which is an independent board that's put together here at the township level, and they hear these applications and make decisions relative to the information that is presented to them. So without further ado, I want to give Mr. Harris an opportunity to explain some things. So why don't we start with what is the responsibility of our Land Use Board?
The responsibility of the board is developers, builders, business folks, and private citizens present to the board applications for anything from housing development, business, addition to your home, even a fence that may be encroaching upon the property line, looking for approval.
Who serves on the board? What's the makeup of the board?
So the board is made up of citizens of Mantua Township that volunteer their time to review plans and applications and attend meetings once or twice a month. In addition to that, we have professionals on the board, an attorney, a planner, and an engineer.
What is the task of the board when they receive an application?
Okay. The task of the board is to determine if the request is consistent with the intent of the zoning ordinances and the master plan. Zoning ordinance is what was established back in probably the 50s that determine what business can occur where, what housing can occur where, the size of the lots, setback for the buildings. The master plan is more like a blueprint of future development. The state requires every 10 years to have that updated, and that kind of gives us a direction of growth for the town.
So I think it's important to explain to the residents the board makes decisions based on those criteria that you just mentioned, but the board really doesn't have influence over what types of applications or who comes before the board. For an example, let's talk about a commercial property. We don't have the ability to say, oh, our residents want a McDonald's versus a Burger King. The board doesn't play a role in that. The board makes a decision on those applications that are presented to them based on a seller of a property and a prospective buyer that wants to purchase the property for that intended use.
Correct. We can only make a decision based on the intent of the ordinance. What we can't decide is, do we think that business is not financially viable in the town, and deny it. The other thing we can't do is say that, well, we think there's too many of a certain businesses in town, so we can deny it. Both of those will lead to suit from the developer because it's not a legally acceptable reason to deny.
And here, I've gotten emails, phone calls, I see it on social media where residents have this misunderstanding that the board's role is to determine what places go in certain locations, and it's just not that way. I think we talked about, but maybe you can elaborate. What can the board not do?
Cannot deny a by right development. In other words, if the application does not require a use variance or any kind of variances for size of the building or location, if we deny it, they have grounds to sue.
Well, what typically happens when you deny without legal grounds and a lawsuit is filed, what typically is the outcome?
The outcome is that we will lose, the township will accrue legal fees, and the developer will go ahead. And the problem with that is at that point, the board has lost any input into the project. Before that point, we can, hopefully get some concession. Prime example of this is surrounding towns and warehouses. They denied when it was an approved use, and they lost in court, and those warehouses are now being built.
Right, and when you talk about legal fees, like the legal fees, these things can go on for years, and townships or municipalities can incur substantial costs relative to defending these lawsuits, and those costs are passed along to the taxpayers. So that's why it's so very important for our board members like yourself and the other volunteers to follow the legal advice and the guidance of the professionals when making these decisions. Let's talk about why postponements occur.
There's two kinds of postponements. One is our secretary develops an agenda 10 days before the meeting. It's based on when she receives completed applications from the applicants. Occasionally, our solicitor will speak to the applicant's solicitor and say, because it's a long meeting, you probably won't be heard. Maybe we should move you to the next month. So that's a postponement that's in everybody's best interest. The most common reason for a postponement comes from the applicant. The applicant either didn't notice properly, the legal notice to everybody within 200 feet. They don't have their engineering done. Their attorney's not available that night. And the problem with that is that postponement usually occurs the day before the meeting, and that upsets everybody. It inconveniences the public, and it frustrates the board because we're ready to hear this application.
And one of the final things I wanted to cover is the misconception that Mantua Township is overdeveloped. And I've put this out and talked about it in my prior mayor videos and on my weekly write-ups. Over the years, we've preserved 24 farms here in Mantua Township, equating to almost 1,100 acres, and we've secured 696 acres of open space, which is the most open space preserved by any of the 24 municipalities in Gloucester County. Can you tell us from your perspective how the township's master plan has been effectively controlling overdevelopment and urban sprawl here in our community?
Looking back into probably the late 50s, early 60s, some far-sighted people within Mantua Township looked at the township and said, everything in the northern half of the town is pretty much set. We have our housing subdivisions, our businesses are like Sewell, Barnesboro, Mantua, centers, but the southern half of the town is very rural and agricultural. And I think and they decided they wanted to preserve that. So long ago, they did 3-acre zoning in that area, which allows only houses on 3 acres, farms, landscaping operations. And that is what has allowed us to have this open space. Like, who drives down Breakneck Road and thinks they're in Mantua Township? Right. It's because somebody long ago decided to conserve that space. Yep. And we as a board feel that's sacred. Right. So if somebody comes before us with 50 acres and want to build a 100-acre subdivision, they are probably going to be denied.
We're not in a position to be overdeveloped, nor are we looking to advance much beyond where we're already at here. We have a good balance here in Mantua Township, and what we have as a makeup of our board, which is primarily residents within the community that have a vested interest in what Mantua Township is about, and we all want really the same things, like Mr. Harris just mentioned. Is there anything else, sir, that you would like to add that we didn't cover?
But I'd like to talk a little bit about the role of the public.
Okay.
The public is always invited to land use board meetings. Everyone within 200 feet of a project are notified, and their input is important. They often have legitimate concerns that need to be addressed, and we want to hear those concerns, and that helps us maybe modify the plan a little bit. But it's important for the public to know that they can't block something from proceeding because of non-legal reasons. We are tied to the ordinances, and we have to follow them.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Helping to educate our community about this very, at times, a daunting process. And appreciate your service. 30-some years is a lot of years to be serving on the board, and now as the chairman. So we're very much appreciative of your service and that of the other members of our land use board. So in closing, I want to thank everybody for watching. And as always, we look forward to continuing our service with honesty, integrity, and trustful leadership. Thank you.